You have to lead father-like characteristics. I am disgustingly like my dad. There are things in me I know now as a man that came straight from my dad, and it never helped my marriage. Hello? There are things in you that come straight from your mother that is not good, that does not help your marriage. So when the Bible says a man shall leave his father and mother, it's not the house, it's the father-like spirit, the mother-like spirit, the father-like attitude, the mother-like attitude. And you've got to leave that and cleave to each other. Give the Lord praise if you would be. Turn to your neighbor and ask your neighbor, who are you married to? Who are you married to? Is it me? Is it you? Who are you married to? Oh my God. You could actually be married and married to someone else psychologically and emotionally. Some people are, listen to me, already emotionally divorced. You're still with them. You're still in the same house. You're married on paper, but in your mind you're married to someone else. Is it this table? Is there anyone on this table that fit that description? Who are you married to? Don't answer right now. Now, all of that is in that one scripture. God says, I will make you a mate comparable to you. I believe that compatibility is overrated. Being compatible is not enough spiritually to be married. I had a passion in my younger life to be a football player. I was in the U.S. Navy preparing for a career in U.S. football. For those of you that know anything about rugby and or football, there is a player that is usually assigned to carry the ball. In American football, we call that person a halfback, a running back, a fullback. Well, my goal was to become a football player. And I decided, after I answered the call of God, that I was going to decide to go another way. God called me out of that. Let me explain. If I would get married at the time that I had a passion for football, my mate would have needed to be compatible with me in loving football. But compatibility is overrated, because compatibility is learned behavior. You could learn to like soccer. You could learn to like football. You could learn to like knitting and sewing. Hello. You could learn to like the things that women like. You could learn to like the things that men like. That's called compatibility. Hello. But compatibility is overrated. What we really need is comparability. Compatibility is a learned behavior. Comparability is an existence. It is a part of your being, not your doing. Hello. Your being must be comparable to the person you marry. For instance, it doesn't matter that my wife does not like football. She could learn to like it. I'm teaching her to like it. But that is not most important to me. What is most important is that we are comparable. What do I mean? I am called to the ministry. My ministry is people. So whoever I marry must be a people person. That is not compatibility, that is comparability. Give the Lord praise if you understand what I'm saying. Some people don't have a prayer life. It is difficult to be married to someone who is not spiritual. Then the only thing you have is compatibility. You don't have comparability. I'll explore that a little more later. God said, I will make you, Adam, a helper comparable to you. She was not only comparable physically, she was not only comparable in terms of her help ability with Adam, but she was comparable in that she came out of Adam. It's called Adam's bone. Did you know that you could get to the DNA of a person through their bone? Did you know that blood is actually created in the bone marrow? Hello? So if we are going to truly be one, we must be connected bone to bone. Adam was put to sleep. God took the bone out of Adam, created the woman, because all of what was necessary for a female to be complete was already in Adam. He presented the woman to Adam and he said, wow, man, woman. I want to go to the next slide. When we look at the next slide, I want to share with you that most people are not aware that there are 8 different types of marriages in the Bible. Which one is right? We have a lot of people who are now questioning the Bible as it relates to marriage. You can't tell someone any longer that you have to be married according to the Bible. Anyone reading the Bible will then ask you the question, what kind of marriage in the Bible? Notice on the far left, one man plus one woman. Do you see it? That's the first type of marriage. This is what we call a monogamous relationship. Wives subordinate to their husbands, interfaith marriages forbidden, marriages generally arranged, not based on romantic love. The bride who could not prove her virginity was stoned to death. That's the first type of marriage. The second type, let's go down the list. The second type is man plus wives, plural, plus concubines. Now, if you tell someone you got to be married according to the Bible, suppose they pick one that is not like number one. It's still in the Bible. You can't tell them they're wrong because it's a biblical marriage. In the Bible, there are 8 different types of marriages. So it is up to us to learn the 8 different types of marriages, because you can't tell people on the street you got to be married according to the Bible. If they read the Bible, they're going to find 8 different kinds. Which one is right? An example of the second one, and I'm going to move on. You will be able to get a copy of this from Pastor Joseph. What I want you to understand is that in this second example of man plus wives plus concubines, we have people like Abraham, Gideon, Jacob. Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. A concubine is a female slave. So he had 300 female slaves at his disposal. And he had 700 wives. Now, I don't know what he was drinking, or smoking, or popping, but I can hardly handle the one that I have. Hello? So the answer, listen carefully, is that the 700 wives that Solomon had were not romantic relationships. You might want to get this. You might want to note this. The 700 wives that Solomon had were militarily arranged marriages. Solomon did not marry them because he loved them or wanted to have a family. Solomon had 700 wives because if you had to go to war, if you married into the family that you had to go to war against, you were more likely not to go to war because your family. Solomon was a wise man. The 700 wives of Solomon were not romantic marriages. They were military arranged marriages, so Solomon would not have to fight all of these foreign nations. That's the second category. There are 8 different types of marriages in the Bible. Here is another one. On the far right of the chart, there is, you see the skeleton? Do you see this weird guy over here? Do you see him? This weird guy, the skeleton? You see this guy? What does he have to do with this woman? And what does this man have to do with this woman and the skeleton? In Genesis chapter 36, in Genesis chapter 36, verses 6 through 10, the Bible teaches about levirate marriage. Levirate marriage means that if a woman marries a man and he dies, according to the levirate law, you would have to marry that man's brother. Wow. So if the man died, the woman would have to marry the man's brother. Do you want this kind of marriage? Are you sure? You mean you wouldn't want to marry my brother if I died? Come on, please. Oh. Be careful when you tell people you have to be married according to the Bible. Because according to the Bible, you could be married 8 different ways, and it was in the Bible, and God allowed it. Some of you may not be aware of it, but that's the marriage Ruth and Boaz had in the Bible. It was a levirate marriage. Ruth's husband died, and she was now a widow. She was, this is interesting, she was a Moabitess woman, which means that she was not a believer. She was not Jewish. She was not raised according to the Torah. She was not a believer. So this woman, Ruth, adopted Naomi as her mother. And Ruth said, your God will be my God. Where you go, I will go. Where you will die, I will die. So she entered in to the commitment religiously, spiritually, and culturally of Naomi. And in Naomi's culture, in Naomi's tradition, if a husband died, you married his brother. Now, there was a way out of it. The way out of it in the book of Leviticus is that you had to spit in his face. Hello. You had to go through a ceremony which included his shoe and also included spitting in his face. So, listen, the next man in line with Ruth to have a husband was not Boaz. It was another man. But the other man didn't want Ruth. So then the next man in line was Boaz. And Boaz welcomed Ruth. He saw her gleaning in the fields. He could see that she was hot. He could see that she had potential. So he was willing to go through the ceremony called the levirate marriage ceremony, and he took Ruth, to be his wife. When most people, this is going to hurt. Can you handle it? We're adults, right? Can you handle this? Hallelujah. The only woman in the Bible who is called a virtuous woman was Ruth. The woman in Proverbs 31. All of Proverbs was written to men. The Proverbs 31 woman is not about a virtuous woman. It is about a virtuous man who found a virtuous woman and married her. All of Proverbs was written to men, young men that were emerging as leaders in their community. And if you notice, go back and read Proverbs. It describes wisdom in a feminine gender. Search for her. Seek after her. Wisdom in Proverbs is a woman. And the female name in English, Sophia, comes from a Greek word. And the Greek is Sophia. If you want Sophia, wisdom, seek her. Do we have a Sophia in the house? Is there a Sophia? It's okay. It's okay. Now, let me wrap up this first part. What I want you to understand is that in Proverbs, wisdom is a woman. And the reason why wisdom is a woman in the book of Proverbs is because men need to pursue wisdom like they pursue a woman. Hello? If you're going to have wisdom, seek wisdom like you would seek a woman. So in Proverbs, wisdom is a woman. And when we get to the end of Proverbs, we have a woman who we call a virtuous woman, but it took a virtuous man to find her. And when Proverbs 31 ends, they both meet at the gate. The gate was not for women. The gate were for men who were making decisions in society. It starts in the first part of Proverbs at the gate, and it ends with the woman at the gate, which means that a man who is a real man will find a woman, empower her, give her the resources to be the best woman she could be, and then they both meet at the gate. Give the Lord praise if you understand what I'm saying. The most important thing about being a woman is to be empowered by a virtuous man. All of Proverbs was written to men. Proverbs 31 is not about a woman. It's about a virtuous man who empowered a virtuous woman. Let me close this section. Go back to Ruth. Ruth is the only woman in the Bible who is really called a virtuous woman. When she meets Boaz, they meet in a very intimate setting. At the threshing floor, the scripture tells us she fell asleep at his feet. Now, if you want to be super spiritual, you could just say she was tired and she fell asleep. If that's what you want to think. But that virtuous woman, the only one that's called virtuous in the Bible, encountered the man of her dream. He did not have to marry her. He did when nobody else would. Brought her into the lineage of Abraham, provided her with the promises of God, and they got married. Hello. The point I'm making is that this is going to hurt. Everybody don't start marriage off right, but it can end right. Ruth and Boaz didn't start out right, but it ended right. The only woman in all of Scripture that is called a virtuous woman woke up at a man's feet. That was not some game. That was not some incident that God would leave out of the Bible. He left it in the Bible so we can understand that marriage, if it's going to work, is going to need the grace of God. Ruth and Boaz represents people who are recipients of the grace of God. Give the Lord a clap. Now, when I come back, I'm going to get into some discussion about the book, Saving Your Marriage Before It Starts. There's one point that I failed to mention. I want you to stay with me. Did you know that men are born with brain damage? You missed it. For everyone who missed it, I'm going to say it again. Did you know that every man is born with brain damage? You're right. I didn't hear an amen either. But this is a documented fact. And we're going to take a break after I make this fact. Listen, every male child and every baby, male or female, is born with a membrane. Hello. And that's why when a baby is born, you're very careful how you handle that baby's head. Because the membrane or the nerve that run between the right and left hemisphere of the brain is still developing. Listen to this. It takes a man 26 years minimum to catch up with a woman mentally. Wait a minute, Bishop. Dr. Lloyd, you gotta explain this one. It is a documented fact that boys have brain damage. Men have brain damage. Listen, the right hemisphere of the brain in a man develops slowly. It's a known fact that a man only around 26 to 30 does his right brain fully develops. So if you marry someone before they're 30, God bless you. Come on. Have mercy on you. You might have something, but I don't know if he's a man. he has brain damage. Listen, this is a medical documented fact that the membrane or the hemispheres of the brain is connected by a nerve that sends impulses to the right and left hemisphere of the brain. Females are born with both hemispheres of the brain fully developed. Fully developed. When you get to heaven, every man in here, when you get to heaven, ask God what's really going on. What's really going on? Listen. So, listen to this. Women are right brain creatures naturally. And because the left and right hemisphere of the brain develops from birth in a woman, she is quicker than a man, wiser than a man. She will learn how to play games and do things that boys don't learn how to do as children. If you watch, and any of you that are in childhood education will know that little girls learn quicker than boys. Now you know why. Now, let me explain. What does this mean? What does it mean as it relates to marriage? Here is the answer. Men are born with brain damage.
You say it one more time.
You're through. You're through. So listen. A man becomes fully mature in the right and left hemisphere of the brain when he's about 30. So what is going on from birth to 30 in a man? Whatever's going on, you don't want it. Why is that important? Women are born with fully mature right brain, left brain. Unless a man is left-handed, and I am. For real. I'm going somewhere with this. Do we have any left-handed men? The left side of the body, you have to connect with the right side of the brain. So boys that are left-handed learn to mature faster in the right hemisphere of the brain quicker than right-handed boys. Hello. Now, it just works, Pastor. It just works. All right. So a left-handed boy is necessarily have to use the right brain. But men, by nature, are left brain creatures. Left brain means that they are more interested in things relating to what is cognitive, things that relates to thinking, doing, creativity, things like that. The right side of the brain is more designed for what is intangible, like passion, compassion, sensitivity, patience, loving kindness, tender mercy, things like that. So watch this. In order to connect with what is intangible, it has to come from the right side of the brain. Women are creatures creatures of the right brain from birth. So they are more sensitive, they're more able to identify with pain, passion, love, and all of the emotions because they live every single day in the right hemisphere of the brain. But for men, we were born with brain damage. And since we were born with brain damage, we have to mature and we've got to ask God to help us connect with the right side of the brain. Back in the day, there used to be a dance. I don't know what it was called, but I know I used to dance this way. And it used to go like this. So what I tell people, Pastor, I tell men, you gotta go right. You gotta go right. You're used to living in the left brain. You have to learn how to go right. So we created a dance, and it goes. God created women to have use of both hemispheres of the brain from birth. But the men, they have to learn how to dance. They have to learn how to dance. If you are left-handed, you're dancing from birth. If you are left-handed, you are learning how to necessarily depend on the right brain. I want to close this segment by saying that God knew what he was doing when he created the man, and out of the man, he created the woman. God did not go back to the ground when he made the woman. He went inside the man. So in my book, Adam's Bone, I teach that women are creatures of the inside. If men could just let women in, if they could just let the woman get closer inside, what a woman is more concerned about is what's going inside of that man. She is going to adjust to what's going on outside of the man. But if you're going to succeed in a relationship with a woman, you've got to be brave enough to allow her inside. When she gets inside, because she's a creature of the inside, she was made from inside of Adam. Every woman is more interested in how you feel about her than how you think about her. If you could tell her how you feel, women are going to be always asking feeling questions. Feeling questions, because they live in the feelings right side of the brain 24/7. So the first thing you should do when you wake up in the morning and go to bed at night is tell your wife how you feel. Because when you let her in, she's fulfilled, she's a creature of the inside, and if she could just know how you're thinking, what you're feeling, she connects with you, and that is fulfilling to her.